Hello, welcome. My name is Tina Alkowicz, and I'm going to take you through a short presentation around the different applications and ways to use your Healy, as well as explore the new exciting Healy Coil, which I'm wearing right here. So we'll look at that more closely as well. Right now, I'm just going to screen share with you a presentation that I've put together. If you're like me, having a visual is helpful. So let me just get that up here. So yes, like I was saying, tonight's objective is just to create a very short and concise presentation around making some distinctions between the different applications of Healy itself. So let's take a look. Right now I have the US disclaimer up on the screen. If you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to read over that. While you're doing that, I'd also like to disclose that I am not a quantum scientist, nor have I been hired by Healy to give this presentation this evening. Everything I'm sharing with you is based on my own understanding after attending many calls with Marcus Schmieke, the founder and creator of Healy, as well as listening and following many other teachers like Mike Curley, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and many others. So I'll be weaving that through the call. Before we dive into the Healy Coil itself, I'd like to just start by building a foundation to make sure we're on the same page as we move through the presentation this evening. So Healy itself is a portable wearable frequency device that literally fits in the palm of your hand. And you can use it anytime, any place. You can use it on a plane to run a protection program. You could select a fitness program to run while you're working out. You could choose even to run a learning or a concentration program while you're on the call this evening. I know I do that through many webinars. So I'm going to start with the two applications we're the most familiar with, one being the microcurrent and the other being the resonance vibrate mode. I'm going to start with the microcurrent because every edition of Healy allows you the ability to run a microcurrent program. And we do that by operating it through what we lovingly refer to as our Pink Dot app. We simply connect the cables themselves to the Healy device and then connect them to either the wristbands or the adhesive pads, and that will depend on which program you're running. Then you would turn on your Healy, select the program, and then a microcurrent is being delivered to the body. What's actually being delivered is electrons, which are specific particles directly to the body and the cells themselves. So it's optimizing cell potential. So if you'll look at the screen right now, you'll see a slide up that is showing how it can help benefit ATP production, increase protein synthesis, as well as increase amino acid transport. It's also been shown to regulate the nervous system, as well as many other things. We could do a whole deep dive just around the microcurrent itself. But again, tonight, it's mainly about making the distinctions. So the main thing for you to take away when looking at the microcurrent in comparison to vibrate with the resonance, or now the new Healy Coil, is that it's working with you on a very physical level. It's working with your biology and your physiology directly. Now, Marcus, as well as many practitioners, have stressed the benefits of running at least one microcurrent program a day. In the beginning, when working with the microcurrent, it's suggested to use between 1 and 3 at the most until your body gets used to the frequencies. If you're healthy, you might find that you're able to run more than that. But just remember, too much of a good thing ends up not being such a good thing. Chocolate is good, but 5 pounds of it can make you sick. So just know that when you're using the microcurrent, not to overload the body. And if you start experiencing detox type symptoms, then you might just want to back down a little bit. It's also recommended that if you have any physical ailments, that it would be highly beneficial to use the microcurrent. You do want to look at what the contraindications are for using the microcurrent applications, and just be aware of that and look at that before you start using this method within Healy. So now let's move on over to the Healy Resonance. So the Healy Resonance is a beautiful addition. You know, when we look at things from a holistic perspective, It works beautifully alongside the microcurrent, but it also helps provide a more holistic perspective. It's when it's doing a scan or an analysis or an assessment, if you like, it's looking at the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, mind, body, spirit. And it puts together, based on that information, an analysis for you, an assessment. And with that assessment, you could now create your own health and wellness or self care regimen. You can also take that information and now move over to the microcurrent and select your programs based on that information. I love, there's so much I love about Healy, but one of the main things that I love in terms of this application is it now allows us to explore things deeper and get to the root of something, look at what's contributing and creating an imbalance. So it's giving us more information. And from that information, now we can become more aware. And like I said, in creating our own health and wellness regimens, we're using our own authority and sovereignty to do so. So now, one of the main questions we get is when we use vibrate mode, what is happening? Well, it's vibrating frequencies into your information field. And again, the question is, well, how does it do that? How does it know who you are? How does it find you? So I'm just going to try to use another model to build a bridge, something that you already know and are familiar with, to build a bridge and understanding how this does work. So when you're in a car and you turn on the radio, when you're when the signal isn't when you're not connected and you're in tuned to that signal, you just hear static. But once you do a tune and you're picking up the signal of that radio station, you're able to hear the music or whatever broadcasting on the radio wherever you are. It doesn't matter. And it's the same with you. You are broadcasting an electrical signal out into the field all the time. And that's how it finds you. So if we look at the body itself, it's comprised of 9 different systems, tissues and organs, which are comprised of cells, which are comprised of molecules, which are made up of atoms and subatomic particles, ultimately energy. So you are broadcasting a signal all the time. So similar to tuning that dial is the same as when we're using the resonance itself. I know it's a little bit tricky to get our mind around it because when we don't involve the senses, our taste, touch, feel, all of that stuff, then um, it kind of tweaks our mind because we can't see it, we don't understand it. But just think about it in terms of anything. When you're using a remote control or turning on a light switch, we don't physically see those frequencies, but we know it works. So now science is showing us that this works. So now if we look at this image, this brings me to another another part of all the different aspects of the resonance that I love, because when we go out in the world, we don't get the opportunity to pick and choose 100% what we're interacting with. You know, there's pollutants in the air, there's toxins in the food. And so we're constantly in fields of energy and frequencies that may or may not be good for us or what we would choose for our own health and wellness. Now, with Healy, you have the ability to choose frequencies and create a resonance and clear out your bioenergetic field. So when we do a scan, there's a prompt that comes up to put your finger. It's like an image of a fingerprint. Now, it's not taking your fingerprint, it's there for you to be able to hold a focus. So when we're using the resonance, we want to create a clear intention. When we're about to do a scan, you want to hold that intention and hold that focus. So it's there for you to hold focus. So that is similar to tuning in that radio dial. We want a clear signal, right? If we're thinking of 100 things and we're doing, trying to make tea and do all these other things at the same time, it's discombobulated. So we want a clear, strong signal. And I'll touch on that again in a little bit. This here, I think, creates a really beautiful image of yin and yang, how the microcurrent and the Healy resonance on vibrate work together. It's very synergistic and beautiful the way that they create this holistic way and beautiful way of flowing into each other. Now, one thing I didn't discuss, when you're using the microcurrent, obviously you have the cable, so you're wearing the Healy. When we're using the resonance, the vibrate mode, it doesn't have to be in proximity to you. It could be anywhere on the planet or even on the moon, because again, it's tuning in to a frequency. It's able to find you. So it doesn't have to be in close proximity to you. So this slide here just also gives you another visual to help you understand the distinctions between the two. When we look at the lower part of the screen there, we're looking at the microcurrent, and what it's working with is us as physical matter. It's working with our bioelectromagnetic field. So in quantum, they talk a lot about the particle and the wave. When they're talking about particle, we're talking about solid mass, which it isn't really solid, but to us it seems that way when it has actually physically manifested. And so in that realm is where the microcurrent is working with us. It's working with our electromagnetic field. When we move into using the resonance on vibrate, now we're working with the bioenergetic field, a field of information. So, which would be considered the wave. The wave is a possibility, a potential. You could even say an idea or a thought. It's it's what's there before something is actually created in solid form. So if you look around at everything that you can visually see right now, it started first from being a thought and an idea, a potential, and then it was created and now it's in physical form. So hopefully that helps make a couple of distinctions there. You know, the resonance, if we wanted to look at, you know, what makes that different from the microcurrent, I've talked about, you know, working with the bioenergetic field. But again, it's able to do an assessment. It's helping you become present and aware because you have to hold focus and intention, which is building that muscle for our own awareness, our own consciousness, and to become present in our lives. So it's a nice tool in aiding us in that way. It's also looking at things holistically, and it's working with a different level of information, the wave, in terms of providing and aligning our bioenergetic field. So now let's take a look at the Healy coil. The Healy coil, if you look at the image here, you'll see on the right-hand side, you can see the coil itself. It's actually 2 Tesla coils that are placed 180 degrees in opposition to each other to cross cancel each other out or neutralize that field of energy. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a moment. I'm just going to go through some of the basics around the coil, and then we'll talk around about what the coil is actually doing. Why do we need it? Because when we look at the microcurrent and the resonance part of Healy, feels like we've got all bases covered, but this is really exciting. So we'll get there in just a moment. So it's quick and easy setup. You can see the image there on the left-hand side. You simply slip that coil into the same port that you would put the cables in when using the microcurrent, and it just clips in, quick and easy. And then this is what it looks like. So it's very seamless, beautiful, you know, very elegant design. Okay, so now how do we turn it on and how do we use it? Well, the coil itself is run from the Pink Dot app, the same app that we use for the microcurrent. When we're using the resonance application, it is using what we call the Blue Dot app. So there's 2 separate apps. The Blue Dot is just specific to the resonance itself, and the Pink Dot is where you will use it for the microcurrent as well as the coil. Now you'll see in the images here what's circled in red. If you'll look at the image and you look off to the right-hand side, you'll see 3 little circles that are kind of linked together there. That is an indicator that you could run this program, and it's been designed for either the wristbands or the coil itself. When you see the image like I have circled in black with no little circles all connected there off to the right-hand side, that indicates that is meant to be used with the adhesive pads. So that's just a quick way for you to make those distinctions. And Yeah, so just know you'll use the Pink Dot app and you'll look for that when running it. I will talk about the different ways that you can use the coil because you do want it in close proximity. So microcurrent, you're using the cables, obviously it's attached to you. With the resonance, it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be anywhere close to you. And now the coil is this in between because you're not hooked up to cables, but you do want the Healy either clipped on you or very close to you. I think it's within 20 centimeters. So the you do want it in close proximity. So here's a picture of the coil itself, but to make a distinction between version 1 and version 2, there's been a lot of confusion around that. So if you got your Healy during the US launch in 2020 and onward, your Healy would be version 1. And you'll know that because if you look up in the right hand corner, it's solid, it's just a square. The Healys that were purchased before the US launch or back in 2019 that came from Germany, they had the little triangle notch out up there in the right hand corner. So you can see that. So you'll know which coil version to order based on looking at your Healy, but also if you purchased it during the US launch, then it's more than likely version 1, but you can double check by looking at the image here. Okay, so now let's talk about the Healy coil. So when I was talking a few slides back about 2 Tesla coils that are overlaid 180 degrees in opposition to each other, canceling each other out or neutralizing, if you're like me, then you think, well, it's not doing anything. It's like speaking 2 different languages between quantum and our way in English of speaking. So it isn't creating nothing. What it's actually doing, if we use again another model to create a bridge from something when you wear a noise canceling out headset, it cancels out all the noise so that you can just hear what it is you want to hear. Well, the Healy coil works on the same premise. It's canceling out the electric and the magnetic fields of energy so that we can get to what's behind it, which is called the quantum potential or vector potential. The key word, it's actually known as many different things, but the key word would be potential. So now when we look at that, Marcus said it this way. So I think if you're like me, it made my brain sort of get discombobulated for a moment. He said it's like the wave riding the particle. So it's the wave interfacing with the particle. So they are working simultaneously side by side at the same time. So if you remember when we looked at the microcurrent and we said it's working with the electromagnetic field, and we're also talking about the physical level, matter, and particle. When we look at the resonance, we're looking at the bioenergetic field and we're looking at a waveform of information. So something before it comes into form. Now the coil is this bridge between. So it's this bridge between, which makes it a little bit tricky because it's both the particle and the wave. It's the active information behind the matter itself. It's the information of what creates the cell, what creates each cell in your body. So it's this bridge between the two, but it's not, in the beginning there was a little bit of confusion. So do we just not run microcurrent anymore? And I'm hoping that through this presentation, you'll see that no, you don't want to eliminate any application within Healy because they all work so beautifully together, holistically together. The cables are working, or the microcurrent is working with you on a physical level, your physiology, your biology. The coil is working with the information right before it comes in, if you like. It's that information that creates each cell. And then the resonance, we're working with the information field itself. So it's very exciting. There's so much. When we look at, I like the way that Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how in the quantum field, all possibilities exist. and they exist as electromagnetic possibilities, just like what we were talking about, right? With the microcurrent, which exist as frequencies. And then the question becomes, how do we connect to these frequencies? How do we connect to these potential possibilities? And the way that Dr. Joe describes it, and the way that I've heard Marcus also talk about it, and very coherently aligned in the way that they both explain it, even though in their languaging it can sound different. But when you bring it all down to the main concept, they're saying the same thing, that it requires a coherent brain and a coherent heart with an alive, clear intention. So when we look at that with Healy, we've talked about having a clear intention, a focused, clear intention, and an awareness. And now having the coil that can help build this bridge and create coherence and resonance in the body so that we can align and receive that information is, it's mind blowing. And I know that there'll be so many different talks around the coil itself, and I'm trying to keep it very simple, but basically having the coil now allows us to access higher levels of information, and for our body to be able to receive that information. Our vibration goes up, our energy accumulates, we're more energetic, we become more intuitive, um, we become more in flow. If you've ever had that day where everything just seemed like it just went so good, like you felt good, things were happening, lots of, um, coincidental, magical things were aligning and coming together. And Jamie Wheel talks about this in terms of flow states. And in that flow state, when we have access to higher information and we're able to align ourselves within it and our intuition and our guidance and trust our knowing, and it just creates a different way of being. So I am going to end it on that note because I don't want to. I could talk about this all day if you can't tell already. So I'm just going to leave it there for tonight, just so that we can at least know the distinctions and what each one is doing. So I'm going to stop the presentation now, and I'm just going to share with you a couple of ways in which you can use your Healy coil. So Marcus talks about wearing it here on the collar for heart and mind coherence. You could run the coherence program. So you heard me share, what Dr. Joe Dispenza's thoughts are on that, right? Having a coherent heart and mind allow us to connect to a field of possibilities and potential. We all have a potential that lives within us, that if we could remove all the blocks and traumas and on the spiritual, emotional, physical, all of that, can you just imagine? So that's one way. You could also wear it on your waistband and run some of the chakra programs, for the root or the sacral. I'd like to also say that with the chakras, for a long time, it's been considered sort of woo-woo. And now, as again, science is emerging, we're able to look at it through such a different lens, a broader lens, because each chakra, if you like, is just a center of information. And Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it in that way. These energy centers, then they're connected to meridians and nerves and the endocrine system. So they all have an energy center around them in which they're working. And when we can optimize that, right, if we can clear all that out so that our body can work cohesively, it's dealing with a lot between toxins and our thoughts and all these things, that if we can clear some of that out and allow it to run like an efficient energetic system, an efficient, like a car, that's been tuned up and the oil's been changed, everything else, and it can run well, then yeah, it's amazing what's possible. So I'm going to end it on this note. Marcus talked about, when he was lovingly sharing the Healy coil, that now our Healys speak 3 different languages. And I just think that is such a beautiful analogy when we look at these different applications of Healy. Our Healys now speak 3 different languages. So, oh, and one more thing. He did talk about that you could actually use your coil and place it next to run a program with the Healy coil set up and put it next to water and deliver frequencies to the water, imprint the water with those frequencies. You could also use it in the center of your home. You could run pure, or, if you've been painting, or, you use your intuition and your awareness, do a scan. You can run it and put it in the center of your home and allow the Healy coil then to contribute to your home in that way. So he did talk about lots of different ways that we can use the Healy coil. And again, I know all of that will be shared more in depthly later. So that is it for now. Your Healy speaking 3 different languages, working with you holistically in all these different ways to contribute to your health and wellness. So I hope that this was helpful. I wish you all a good evening. And if you have questions, please feel free to contact me on either any of the pages or directly, and I'm happy to answer them for you. Thank you. Have a great night.